Hello! My name is Lance Ruby, and I'm so excited to be doing my first ever live course here on JamPlay. This course is called Blues and Beyond, and in this course we're going to be talking about ways to push our blues playing forward. So in this lesson we're going to be talking about the basic blues form and kind of reviewing that, learning some new chord grips as well as some cool licks that we can learn. But the rest of this course we're going to talk about the different types of blues, the different blues forms that exist, and some of the embellishments that blues musicians put into the blues to get new sounds out of it. So we're going to be talking about those embellishments, how to play them in our comping, how to play them with chords, as well as how we can address those embellishments with our soloing. So let's jump right in and let's talk about the chord voicings we're going to be using today for our basic 12-bar blues. So if you're familiar with blues, we use seventh chords primarily in blues. Like when people talk about major blues, they're really talking about like dominant seventh blues. Okay, so chords that sound like this kind of thing. So the chord voicings that we're going to be dealing with for our one chord, we're going to be playing this A13 voicing. And so what's going on is that my third finger is on the 7th fret, 4th string. My second finger is on the 6th fret, 3rd string. And my pinky, or fourth finger, is on the 2nd string, 7th fret. And since this is an A chord, we can also use our open 5th string. But the meat of the chord is there only if we play those three notes. Okay, cool. So this stuff, if you look at the tab, if you look at the handout, I've written these chords out. They're the measures basically 1, 2, and 3 on the tab handout. And there's also a handy kind of chord diagram that you can see how these chords look on there. Oh, also one more thing before I go any further. Since this is a live course, if you haven't been around for the other live jam plays, if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, just leave them in the chat on whatever platform you're viewing this on, and I will pop in live at the end and answer all those questions. So if you have any questions at all, I'm going to be happy to answer those at the very end. Okay, so let's jump back into these chords. So the first one, as you can see, it's the very first thing on the tab, is this awesome A13 voicing. Okay, so that's the first chord. I'm going to just call it the one chord, and we'll talk about why. But this is our one chord, A13. The second chord we need, or the 4 chord in this key, is D7. Okay, so if you notice, I'm only moving one note to create the D7. This note that my middle finger is getting is just moving down one fret, and I'm kind of re-fingering it with my first finger. So the D7, my third finger is on the 4th string, 7th fret. My first finger is on the 3rd string, 5th fret, and then my pinky is on the 2nd string, 7th fret. Sorry. So if you notice, only one finger or one note is moving in when we're switching from A13 to D7. Okay, the third and final chord we need to play this blues this week is E7. Okay, so basically we're taking that D7 shape and we're moving it up 2 frets. So my third finger is on the 4th string, 9th fret. My first finger is on the 3rd string, 7th fret, and my pinky is on the 2nd string, ninth fret. So let's just go through those chords as they're presented in the tab. We're just going to go one by one. So here's the A13 chord. Here's the D7 chord. And here's the E7 chord. Okay, so I know that's not the most exciting way to start off a blues course, is learning chord grips, but, you know, I'm a professional musician and I've played a lot of gigs, and especially like guitar gigs, guitar heavy gigs. Us as guitar players, we have this thing where we spend so much time working on soloing and playing licks and maybe even transcribing licks from the players we like, and that is all awesome work that we should be doing. But in a real practical situation, on a gig, you're mostly going to be playing rhythm guitar 80 to 90% of the time. So having a good understanding of the chords and good chord voicings like these are really going to help us out in kind of real situations, more so than solely focusing on soloing. So it's always good to have both. We want to always be evolving our knowledge of harmony and chords, as well as our soloing concepts. Okay, so another reason why these chord grips are so great is because they don't really muddy up the sound of the band. And what I mean by that is that we're not dealing with these big, thick sounding chords, right? We're not playing that much in the bass register. We're kind of in the middle of the guitar, so to speak. And I've found, and you know, it's kind of proven, these kinds of chords will sound better in a band context than these big chords that take up all 6 strings. And the reason for this is that you have the bass player, maybe, right? If we're playing with a bass player, they have more bottom end than us. So this note is kind of going to get blurred together with what the bass player is doing. Whereas if we play these kinds of chords that exist in the middle of the guitar, we're going to be able to kind of stand out and find our spot sonically in the band, which, you know, is awesome. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the chords and what we need to do with them, if we look at the next example on the tab, so here, I'm just going to pull up that tab real quick. Okay, so yeah, if we look at the next tab, and in fact, over top is his comping exercise. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, comping is kind of shorthand for rhythm, okay? So it's short for accompany, you know, like accompany you, and it's also short for complement. So when we're playing rhythm guitar or comping, we want to be thinking about how we can play really solidly, rhythmically with the band, and also how we can complement the soloist or the singer. Okay, so if we look at the second thing on the tab, the comping exercise, we're basically going through a really simple, basic 12-bar blues, and we're using these voicings, and we're also using a really, you know, time-tested comping rhythm for blues music and jazz music. And this rhythm is called the Charleston. And when I'm playing with people, maybe I'm at a blues jam, and this is a jam that I'm not familiar with, and I'm playing with people I'm not too familiar with, I will kind of start playing with a Charleston rhythm, this rhythm that's on the comping example, because you can get it to fit really tightly with the band, especially if they're like kind of swinging. And if you don't know, the Charleston was like a really popular dance in the 20s or 30s, I believe, but it was a big dance craze. And the Charleston was kind of the main like rhythm in that style of music that people did that dance to. So this rhythm, so just get our A13 chord, so then 1 chord. And this Charleston rhythm, it happens on beat 1 and the and of 2. So if we're counting and we're counting eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we're going to have a jab on 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. Okay, let's do it a little faster. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 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 3, 4. Okay, cool. So before we start playing the blues, let me just talk a little bit about 12-bar blues. And the biggest thing I see with my students is, and I think a big hurdle that a lot of people have to kind of get over to play the blues is internalizing the blues form, okay? Especially the 12-bar blues. If we can internalize the 12-bar blues, the other styles of blues that we're going to talk about in this course will become a lot easier. So the main thing that will help us, kind of memorize, but more importantly, internalize this blues form is by thinking about it in 4-bar chunks, okay? So in a 12-bar blues, oh, also one thing, I get this question a lot and I just want to clear it up. Bar or bars equal measures. I get a lot of questions, do bars equal measures, all this kind of stuff. Well, when we're talking about 12-bar blues, it is a 12 measure long blues. I think the confusion comes from that, jazz blues musicians have kind of historically called it bars, but I think classical people maybe have kind of a different definition for the word bar, so maybe that's where the confusion comes from. But in this context, we're dealing with a 12 measure blues, commonly called a 12-bar blues. So hope that helps. But back to what I was saying, to help us internalize this, we're going to think about it in 3 4-bar chunks, okay? So the first set of 4 bars is the 1 chord, or the A13 chord in this example, 4 times. So that means that we're going to play the Charleston 4 times, okay? This is our first chunk. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 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 3, 4. That's the first chunk, okay? Now let's add in the second chunk. So the second set of 4 bars is 4 chord for 2 bars, so D7 for 2 bars, and then back to the 1 chord for 2 bars. So it's kind of half and half. D7 for 2 bars, A13 for 2 bars. So that second chunk just on its own, D7 2 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 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 3, 4. So I played D7 twice and then A13 twice. Okay, so let's combine those two. Let's play the first chunk and then the second chunk. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Second chunk. Back to A. Okay, now we have those 2 chunks worked out. Let's check out the final chunk of the 12-bar blues, which is going to go A7 once, or for 1 bar, D7 for 1 bar, A for 1 bar, and then this is optional in the real world, but in this example, we're going to go back up to the A13. Mini blues, that final chunk will just stay on A. but for this example, we're going to go back up to E7. So one more time, that third chunk for the blues is going to go E7, D7, A, E. Okay, let's play that together. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. E, D, A, E. Cool. All right. So another really helpful tool for us to internalize this blues form and get better at comping or rhythm guitar, whatever you want to call it, is that I've included 2 jam tracks with this lesson, and one has me playing rhythm guitar, comping, and then the other one doesn't have guitar. It's just drums, bass, and organ. So let me pull that jam track up and we'll comp along using the Charleston rhythm to this jam track. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Second chunk. Third chunk. Now you. All right, and D7. Back to A. Now third chunk E, D, A, B. All right, one more time. All right. Okay, great job. Well, hope you did a great job. So if you're brand new to blues, that might be difficult, and that's totally cool. But spend some time, definitely if you plan on watching the next course, to check this out. Follow along with the tab. This is just the second thing on the tab. It says comping example right above it. And try and feel it. Try and kind of memorize the blues form. And to memorize it, use kind of the chunk system, right? There's 3 chunks, and each chunk consists of 4 bars. So for chunk number 1, we have the 1 chord, and in this instance, it's going to be A13 or A7, but for this example, A13, and that happens for 4 bars. So chunk number 1 is just 4 bars of 1 chord. Chunk number 2, 2 bars of 4, 2 bars of 1, and then the third and final chunk is going to go 5 or E7, D7 or the 4 chord, and then A7 or A13, the 1 chord, back up to E7. Cool. Yeah, so spend some time getting that under your fingers. Try and get those chord grips under your fingers. And also, if you're brand new to blues, or maybe this is just a weak point in your playing, which is totally cool, try and get it to so you internalize the blues form. Or memorize it is another word, but we kind of want it deeper than, kind of reciting poetry level of memorization. You want to be able to, feel this stuff and feel when the chord changes and things like that. Be very aware of it. Okay, cool. So let's move on to some licks. I know you're probably very excited about this, or maybe not, but okay. So, if anybody has any questions about comping, anything I've talked about so far, leave it down in the chat on whatever platform you're viewing this on. and I will pop in and answer your questions at the end. So we have 2 licks tonight, and the first one I've just called lick 1, but this lick has a lot of stuff in it, and you can definitely think about this lick as kind of B.B. King inspired. It includes some things that he does a lot, but the cool thing about licks, and where I think a lot of people kind of, maybe miss the boat when it comes to licks, is we don't want to play it exactly how B.B. King played it or Stevie Ray Vaughan played it, right? We want to take this material, shake it up, and adapt it for ourselves and play it in new contexts or new ways, right? Speed it up, slow it down, change the rhythm, repeat parts, let parts kind of be longer, shorter, all the kind of stuff we can vary in music. We want to do that to licks. Okay, so I'll play the lick and then we'll break it down. And like I said, this is right after the comping. This is the next thing on the tab, so make sure you're following along with the tab. And this is just called lick number 1. All right, so this is what it sounds like. One more time. Okay, so pretty awesome lick. And it starts out with this very cool little move that B.B. King does a lot. So what we're going to be doing is kind of doing a rolling bar. So we're not letting the notes ring together, we're stopping it. So I'm playing the 5th fret on the 2nd string and then rolling my finger over to get 5th fret on the 1st string. Right, we want separation in those notes. We don't want them to kind of ring together. Okay, so, and then the next move, with our 3rd finger, we are going to get the 8th fret with the 2nd string, and slide it up to the 10th fret. Cool, one more time. Okay, so there's something really cool here. If you notice, that note we end on is the exact same as the 2nd note, just on a different string. Those are the same note. Ah! Yeah, it sounds a little out of tune, but they're the same note. So, it's kind of, so what we can learn from this lick is that this is a really cool stylistic way to get from box 1 of the pentatonic to box 2 of the pentatonic. So if what I just said, box 1, box 2 of the pentatonic, doesn't make sense, there's tons of resources out there on Jamplay that you can check out that will cover that stuff. That is not in the scope of what we're talking about in this course, but if that part didn't make sense, you can definitely go find that out. Okay, so that's the first move. And also, just how I pick this, I'm going down, up, down, so just alternate picking. Although, depending on the speed in which you're playing, I'm sure you could get any kind of picking orientation to work. Okay, the next part is now we're kind of in box 2, some would say like Albert King land. And so this is the second half. We're going to go. Okay, cool. So we're up here on the 10th fret of the 1st string, and we're going to bend that up a whole step. Okay, and if you have trouble bending, here's just a little quick tip to help you bend. So when we're talking about bending a whole step, we're creating the note that is 2 frets up from there. So when I bend this note on the 10th fret, I am creating the note that exists unbent on the 12th fret. So a good way to like get your bends in tune, which is really important. I'm sure that we've all heard guitarists not bend in tune, and you know, it's definitely a thing to work on, right? Bending out of tune isn't the greatest sound in the world, but I call it the slide and bend. So I'm sliding up, and then I want to recreate that sound with my bend. So cool, you hear that I'm creating that note when I'm bending it up. So I flubbed that one more time. And I'm also giving it a fair amount of vibrato when I get to the note I want. So when we're doing bent vibrato, it's kind of like doing a bunch of little tiny micro bends once we get it up to the top. But it's very important that we don't overshoot with our vibrato. Basically, if I was to like do a visual representation of what I'm doing, I'm bending up to that note, and then I'm bringing it down and back up to that note fast a lot of times, okay? So I'll do it in kind of slow-mo so you can hear what I'm talking about. That's how I do it, very slow. When you speed it up, right? But we got to make sure that we don't, in our vibrato, we get it up to the note and we bring it down and over. We don't want that, right? We want to go up to the note we want, down and back up a bunch of times, kind of fast. Okay, so little tangent, but that's our first bend from the 10th fret on the first string. The second bend we're going to do is on the 9th fret. Now, what's cool about this bend, and guys like Albert King and B.B. King do this a lot, but they're essentially bending in to the blue note, the flat 5, which is a super cool sound. I'm sure that if you're aware of the blues scale, it kind of adds some notes to the minor pentatonic scale. Right? Those are called the blue notes. And this bend is essentially bending up to the blue note. Pretty cool sound. And then our last move is that we're going 8th fret on the first string, and then 10th fret on the second string, and we're going to hit it twice. This is also very common in kind of blues world, is to end a phrase with 2 strikes of the root note. This is the root note. This is an A note, so. Okay, so the lick all together, really slow, sounds like this. Okay, kind of more up to speed. The other little technique I'm doing to make this sound more bluesy is the rake. B.B. King does this a lot. Stevie Ray Vaughan does it all the time. Well, it's one of those things that once you're aware of it, you start noticing that like all your favorite players do it. But how I do it is that I'm essentially just strumming through the strings and I'm muting them with my palm, like a palm mute, like, right? But it's more intense, right? It's farther away from the bridge and closer to the neck. So I'm getting dead notes instead of like muted notes. So I'm muting them, and then when I get to the note I want, I unmute it. It's a really cool sound. It's also one of those techniques that once you get it, you kind of have it. And it might take you a while to get the ability or to kind of figure out the nuance behind it. But basically, it's dead strings through the strum, and then you're lifting up your palm when you get to the strum you want, or the note you want. So maybe if I tilt, let's see. Maybe this is a good angle. You can kind of see I'm muting, and then I'm lifting up. And I'm doing those on both of the bends, so as opposed to just going, just playing those notes and not raking. So yeah, I'm raking through the strings, and I'm lifting up my palm when I get to the note I want. Okay, cool. That is lick number one. Let's hear it over the other backing track, the one that has me comping. And I'm going to probably play it similar to how it's written, maybe the first couple times, and then I'm just going to start messing with it, right? This is just to show you what you can do with this lick rather than here's the lick, here's how to play it, right? We want to expand upon this stuff, we want to build upon it and add our own personal flair and taste to these licks. So here's that. Let me get that backing track pulled up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, awesome. So as you can hear, I started out playing the lick more or less how it's written, and then I started expanding upon it, right? Taking the parts of the lick and maybe repeating them, maybe playing them faster, maybe playing them slower, taking one section of the lick and playing it a bunch of times, or taking that and kind of making that the whole idea, like taking that middle section, right? Just going back and forth between those. There's tons of things that we can do with these licks, right? The lick is just the beginning. When we learn a lick, now it's time to make it ours, right? Not the other way around. We don't make the lick our own by playing it exactly how we learned it. We make the lick our own by making it a part of what we do on the guitar, not only what we do on the guitar. Okay, so that was lick number one. If you pull up the tab and look at the next thing on the tab, I have something called the BB box. Now this is a super awesome tool we have for playing blues on the guitar, and the player that made this position of the pentatonic most famous is B.B. King. That's why I call it the BB box. But essentially, if you're familiar with those 5 boxes of the pentatonic, it's kind of a hybrid on box 3. It's kind of box 3 with some other notes added in. So let's talk about each of these boxes. So our first note in the BB box is going to be the 11th fret on the 3rd string. And this, just so we understand intervallically, the intervals of the scale, this is the major 6 of A. The next note we have is going to be fret 10 on the second string. Now this is the root. Okay, the next note we have is fret 12 on the second string. The next fret we have is fret 13 on the second string. And now we have fret 10 on the first string, and then 12 on the first string, and then finally 14 on the first string. Okay, so let's go through these and talk intervallically or sound-wise what's going on. So like I said, our first note is a major sixth. Second note is the root. The next note is the major second. The next note is the minor third. The next note is the fourth. The next note is the fifth. And the last note is the sixth. Again, if you look, there are octaves of the first note. Okay, so if we just are talking about some habits that B.B. King has with the BB box, it's very common for him to slide into that lower major sixth and then play the root right after. So, right? That's it. You've heard B.B. King do that a bunch, right? Just that little tiny move. Okay? Now, the next two notes are where we have options. Okay, so it's very common for B.B. King and many other blues players to take that next note, the second, the major second, and bend it up to the major third. That's that little bending trick we were talking about before. But the other option is that we take the next note in the scale, that minor third, and we do a half step bend up to the major third. So the same note, we're just bending from a different spot. The first one sounds like this, and the second one sounds like this, which sounds to me a little bluesier. Okay, the next note is the fourth. Most of the time, he's going to play the 4 up to the 5, but there's no like rules, right? There's not like, I don't see a clear habit with how the fourth is used. But the last habit I want to talk about is going, so 5, 1, 1. So we're going 12th fret on the first string, 10th fret on the first string, so the root, so we're going 5, 1, 1. This is like the quintessential B.B. King phrase ender. So by using just some of the stuff we've talked about already, I'm going to improvise a phrase and then end that phrase with that phrase ender. So let's see. Right? That's like, sounds like something that somebody named B.B. King would play. Maybe my thing on it, but yeah, so basically what I did is I slid into the third, or the sixth rather, played the root, did that little half step bend from the minor third to the major third, root, major sixth, and then 5, 1, 1. Okay, cool. So now that we've kind of talked about those habits, let's get into lick number 2, because it uses a lot of these things. So the first thing we do is slide into that major 6. We slide into the 11th fret on the 3rd string. And when I say slide, I'm not even thinking about the fret I'm coming from. I'm either coming from just 1 fret below or 2 frets below. I'm never thinking like, right, just little slides, 1 or 2 frets. It's more about the sound of the slide rather than where we start from. So right after that slide, I'm then playing the root right after, which is like we've talked about, the 10th fret on the 2nd string. And then I'm bending the 12th fret on the, so the major second, the 12th fret on the second string, I'm bending that up a full step to the major third. And then after that, I'm playing the root, and then I'm doing our phrase ender. So here's what the lick sounds like really slowly. All right, let's hear that over the track now. Oh, let me get it pulled up. Stack. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I played some stuff that wasn't just the lick, right? But it's all the stuff we've been talking about, right? It's the notes from the BB box with the kind of habits we've been talking about. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play over the track, and I'm not necessarily thinking about lick number 1 and lick number 2, which is rad. Learn the licks, that's great. But what I'm more thinking about is taking the elements of those licks, jumbling up, and making music, right? That's the goal. So, cool. I'm going to play the track again, and I'm going to be taking ideas from lick number 1 and lick number 2 and mixing them up. And hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing, right? That's an idea from lick number 1. That's from lick number 2. That's a note from the BB box. Okay. So here we go. All right. Now here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. So, as you can see, I was adding basically nothing, maybe some notes from box number 1, but really all the ideas that I was playing were generated from lick number 1 and lick number 2. I was expanding upon them. Okay, cool. So, before I go, which I don't have much time left, but before I go, I just want to say a great way to practice this. So we talked about the comping, we talked about those chord voicings and the Charleston rhythm, right? And our licks. So a great way to practice this is going to be comp a chorus or one time through the 12-bar blues. So comp along with the backing track, and then on the next chorus or the next time through the 12-bar blues, solo. And then when you get done soloing, go back to comping. Trade choruses with yourself. Comp one time, right? Comp for 12 bars, solo for 12 bars. Comp for 12 bars, solo for 12 bars. This is a really excellent way to practice because it internalizes the blues form in two ways. We're internalizing the blues form in a comping chordal sense, and we're also learning how to listen to what the chords are doing while we're soloing. Okay, cool. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions from anything I talked about, I'm going to be popping in live soon to answer your questions. So leave them in the chat and I will see them, or somebody will see them and send them to me and I will react to them and answer them. So if you have any questions at all, please leave those in the chat. And I hope you enjoyed the first lesson in Blues and Beyond. All right, I'll see you next week. Well, I'll see you live right now. Hello! My name is Lance Ruby. Thank you for watching my first live course. That was a ton of fun. I was seeing some of the comments and it was awesome. I hope you all enjoyed it. So if you guys have any questions, somebody's going to feed me the questions that you left on the chat and I will be happy to answer them. Can you explain how you get a 13 chord when there is only 12 notes? Okay, this is a great question. So, yes, there's only 12 notes, and basically what the 13 means is that it's an extension. So what I mean by that is if we just play the major scale, hopefully everybody's like kind of familiar with the major scale, and we just number the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is 1 again, but we could call it 8, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we can think of it as the 6th scale degree up an octave. That's how we can, that's kind of an easy way to understand it. And yeah, it's just an extension of a chord. When we're talking about adding other notes to chords, we're going to talk about them as if they're up an octave, because we're thinking about the chord, and then above that we have the extensions. So like the 9th is really the 2nd note, or the 2, up an octave. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1/8, 2/9, 3. We don't really talk about the 3 as an extension because it's already a part of the chord, but 4/11. Don't really talk about the 5 as an extension because it's already in the chord. And then 13/6. Yeah, so that's why it's a 13 chord, and yeah, we have 12 notes, but we call it a 13 note. We basically rename notes as they go up the octave. Okay, looks like Dave asked, what are the best amp settings for the blues? Well, I mean, if you asked 5 different guitar players, you're going to get 5 different answers. You know, I know an excellent blues guitar player who uses Kemper amps, which are basically modeling amps, like a computer amp, and he gets a great sound. Me personally, I really love Fender amps. I'm playing through a Princeton right now, And the cool thing about these amps, these single channel amps, is that you basically get more saturation, gain, distortion, whatever, all those words kind of mean the same thing, the louder they get. So personally, my favorite amp setting is to have a clean amp, but turned up so that my overdrive pedal is essentially my guitar volume. And then if I need that extra little push, a little like a tube screamer, or there's tons of different overdrive pedals, and a lot of them are very good. So that's my favorite kind of setting to play blues, is a kind of crunchy Fender amp, and then if I need a little extra, something like a tube screamer or something in that vein at least. I hope that answers your question. My biggest thing I can say about gear is that you should go experience it. Nobody on a forum or even on a thing can tell you what you're going to love, right? I can show you how to play some licks and stuff, but I can't really tell you the gear that is going to be the most comfortable for you. Go experience it. Go play Marshall amps. That might be your deal. Or Vox amps or Fender amps. Any of that kind of stuff. Just go experience it rather than, because it's all personal preference. Okay, I got a new question. Would you ever play the second strum of the Charleston with an upstroke? This is a great question. Thank you so much, Big Jim 467. So traditionally, it's played with two downstrokes. I typically try and avoid upstrums with a big asterisk above that, which is unless I want that sound. With things like comping blues, I want a more uniform sound. Even if I'm playing with the Charleston and not exactly playing perfect Charleston, I'm still doing mostly downstrokes. The only time I really want an upstrum is when I want that sound of where I'm hearing the higher strings before the lower strings. So like a funky kind of thing. Part of that thing is that the difference between the downstrums on the downbeats and the upstrums on the upbeats. We're going to get a brighter sound when we upstrum, just because of the physics of our hand, and also just that we're hitting the higher strings before the lower strings, whereas downstrumming is going to be the lower strings and then the higher strings. So for specifically the Charleston, when we're just playing the Charleston, I think it sounds way better, and it's kind of traditionally played with two downstrums. But yeah, upstrums are rad too, but at least for me, I want it to be really intentional when I want that sound of that kind of plucky upstrum versus the more subdued kind of piano texture of a downstrum. Okay, I got a new comment. I can't pronounce the name, but I'm loving your scale and arpeggio system course on Jamplay. Hey, thank you very much. Have you any more courses in the pipeline? Well, you'd have to ask the fine folks at Jamplay about that. But I don't know how you exactly access them, but I did some tool kits. I did 3 different tool kits. One's on blues, which is kind of a great companion to this live course. And I did one on practicing, which I've gotten a lot of positive feedback for. And then, but the scale and arpeggio course is the main course right now. Oh, I also have a toolkit on lead guitar, which is real. I had a lot of fun putting that together too. But yeah, I'm happy that you're loving the scale and arpeggio system. And like the first question I got about the 13 and all that, we talk about that in really great depth in that course. if you're a person who's ever like wanted to understand the fretboard better, I really think that course is a great place to really dive in and understand the fundamentals of the fretboard, you know, things like scales, arpeggios, where we can play them all over the neck, knowing the notes all over the neck. This is the kind of stuff we get into in that course. And that's the scale and arpeggio system that I use and that I teach all my students. And the reason why it was like the first thing I did with jam play is just because I've seen it work. You know, I've seen my students go from, really leaps and bounds after learning the scale and arpeggio system in terms of understanding the guitar and, being able to play things all over the fretboard. So thanks. I'm really happy that you're loving my scale and arpeggio system course. I hope I do more. I would love to do more, but if you're wanting some more of my teaching, we're going to be doing this same bat time, same bat place here Thursday, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I think it's like 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can catch it on Facebook and YouTube, and you can also check it on the Jam Play website in the live course tab. And there's going to be 10 weeks of this, and this is just the first one, and we're going to get into some really cool stuff, like the kind of the stuff that has been added to the blues that modern blues guitar players like Robin Ford and Josh Smith, Kirk Fletcher, Eric Gales, Joe Bonamassa, what these guys are doing in the blues, these added little embellishments to get a modern blues sound. I hope you all enjoyed it. I loved watching it with you guys and seeing your comments and answering your questions. So I'll see you next time, Thursday, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern. And I hope you really enjoyed it. So, think we're off.